Hey, did you hear? Vince McMahon and WWE are doing another superstar shakeup. Do you mean a draft? Well, he calls it a superstar shakeup for some reason, but it doesn't matter. We all end up losing at the end because we don't get what we want.
In time, you will know what it's like to lose. To feel so desperately that you're right, yet to fail all the same.
Oh, come on, Vince. But you always say you listen to the fans and you give them what we want.
Dread it, run from it. Destiny still arrives.
But Vince, think of the WWE Universe. It should be fun for us.
Fun is not something one considers when balancing the WWE Universe. But this puts a smile on my face.
And with that said, just having a little fun there at the beginning, I'm good old JM, and welcome to the JM Report here, coming straight out of the Tampa campus of the CSB, Connecticut School of Broadcasting, and Tampa Bay, the home of pro wrestling. I know some will argue that, but if you think about it, many legends have come out of the Tampa Bay area and went on to have successful careers in the world of professional wrestling. And a couple of them, actually quite a few of them, were in the media. And unfortunately, not all for the good, because we lost two legends, and there was a documentary last weekend on probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. And matter of fact, let's just get right into it. Speaking of the greatest of all time, Andre the Giant had a biography aired on HBO last Sunday. And I got to say, it's well done. There have been previous documentaries or autobiographies, if you will, on Andre the Giant before, but this one was so more in depth and had more background stories. I know I'm not the only one. When they first viewed it, not only got choked up at the end, but watching and listening into the stories of his early childhood, stand corrected, and his introduction to pro wrestling. And the rare pictures that were shown, courtesy of his family, his siblings, all the way back in France, and just how lean he looked and how slim but still a big man. He wasn't exactly at 7 feet tall once he began wrestling, and it was just amazing to watch these old photographs of Andre, and I was really taken back by it. A lot of other stories that some sounded familiar, but just told at a obviously different perspective in time. You got Hulk Hogan talking about his WrestleMania match with Andre and how nervous he was, and that's an old times tale from Hogan and from Vince McMahon, as a matter of fact, how nervous he was facing Andre, whether or not he will do the honors, if you will, to allow Hogan to pin Andre 1, 2, 3 in the main event of WrestleMania 3 for the title, and how uptight Hogan was throughout the day. Apparently, Andre liked to play ribs on some of his opponents, even though he was undefeated for 15 years up to that point. But with Andre, you never knew. And with some of the people that were interviewed, from Tim White to the cast of The Princess Bride, a couple of other pro wrestling historians were on the documentary, and they painted what was already a what's the best way to describe this? To me, Andre was always one of the best stories ever told. He got to live out his dream. He did it even past when he was probably shouldn't be, at least physically. He was told, maybe you shouldn't do this for any longer. Your health is at risk. You're constantly in pain. And he kept going because he loved the sports that much. He loved the fans that much. And he couldn't really say no. You couldn't really talk him or convince him otherwise. And that's the one thing I took away from this documentary. He just did it his way. And He fought to the end the best he could. And as many of you know, when he lost his father, late 92, just a few weeks later into 93, Andre passed away in a hotel room in France and Paris. And that was the end of the career and life of Andre the Giant. If you haven't already, again, I cannot stress enough, you need to see this Andre the Giant show. It's about an hour and a half long. They crammed in a lot for an hour and a half long. Usually these things are about 2 hours, if not a little more. I wish I would have heard a little more. I'm sure there's some rare interviews we've never seen. I wish they could have thrown in a few of his TV talk show appearances, whether it's on David Letterman or Johnny Carson. You know, it's old footage, but for the new audience, for the new fans that are just now hearing about this one giant of a man. And I do not remember who said it in the documentary, but it was referencing to the Princess Bride movie. Before there was CGI, there was Andre the Giant, and I cannot agree with that statement anymore. And hopefully the new fans, the new generation who come across, say, a poster or an action figure, and they see the logo of the WWE and ask mom or dad, and who's this guy? I've never seen him wrestle. No, he's a legend. He's Andre the Giant. And I hope Andre was very happy and proud of the project at the end. It was a collaboration of WWE and HBO. And his daughter does make an appearance. I think it was the A&E version of the documentary that mentioned that Andre did have a daughter, but kept it secret, kept it away from many of his close friends and colleagues, and never gave a reason as to why. But I mean, that's something you really don't want to question, especially best of my knowledge, everything worked out for everyone. Andre went on with his career, and the daughter lived a very happy, healthy life. And she was kind enough to sit in front of the cameras and share stories of her father. So that's something else that we all learned. And again, check it out if you haven't had a chance already. People were trying to be slick and upload it on YouTube, but they get pulled immediately. So if you have HBO Go, or maybe they'll rerun it sometime in the near future, give it a try. I mentioned last time that there was an incident after WrestleMania when Brock Lesnar left the ring, headed towards the back, and apparently had an argument or a confrontation with Vince, where Shane McMahon had to step in and intervene. And according to Bodyslam.net, it was all a ruse by Vince McMahon himself to, quote, manipulate the pro wrestling sites who they knew would leak it, or it was severely overhyped. That he's referring to the incident itself. So he had an idea that if Brock would come backstage and cause a fuss, cause a scene, and somebody, whoever I guess was in that general area, would go back to one of the sites and give a scoop. Hey, Brock Lesnar just snapped and he's taking it out of Vince, and Shane McMahon was caught in the middle. It makes for a great story, but I think this is Vince McMahon's way of saying, like, well, you think you know what's happening, but at the end, I'm still swerving you. Yay, I guess. I mean, I guess you got to find your own ways to have fun, but it was all the rules. No one was hurt. Lesnar ended up signing a new contract anyway, which to many, including myself, was a huge question mark hanging over your head. Why would it resign if this happened? Who in their right mind, so it was a multi-billion-dollar company, have an incident with someone whose contract is expiring or just did, re-sign them anyway the following day, if not the day of the incident? Doesn't make sense, but in a way, I'm kind of glad to hear, because that this was all just a ruse, and Brock Lesnar resigns anyway. But not everyone's happy, because we're just back to Universal Champion Brock Lesnar just showing up when he wants to, and not in the near future, but maybe next week, Greatest Royal Rumble, drop the belt, but we'll see. And that also includes his UFC contract. When exactly he'll fight again, unclear at this time, because he needs to go back into the USADA drug testing pool and get cleared again officially. But if you look at his physique as of late and compare him to, let's say, 2-3 years ago, I say there's a slight change For the good or the better, well, I guess we have to wait for the results whenever it gets back into the Asada pool. Now, this one caught a lot of people off guard. Personally, it didn't affect me as much as many of the fans are commenting all over social media. But John Cena and Nikki Bella have broken up after 6 years in relationships and I guess in professional career as well. Now, how can I put this? I'm a bit in the middle of this, not literally, not personally. Meaning, I'm not sure how to take this because, yeah, it sucks to break up with anyone, especially after 6 years. My goodness, I don't even have a pair of socks that long. But then again, why would I? But then you hear something that a lot of fans, mostly from the female side of things, that they love to see and hear about a long-lasting relationship, and everyone's happy, everyone's doing what they want and getting what they want, for the sake of happiness, that is. I'm not saying to get away with murder, no. But, and this just came out of the blue. It came late last weekend. I believe it was Sunday into Monday morning. And I got the notification from a YouTube channel that I'm subscribed to, and they were already talking about it. I'm like, what? And sure enough, it was spreading like wildfire throughout the wrestling sites that Vince was manipulating. And even a couple of, I don't know what you call them, but I guess it's pop culture sites, or, like E! Entertainment News and what's that magazine called? It's not GQ, but a few magazines on their websites picked it up. Pretty much any magazine company that's had them for pictorial or on the cover of, they picked up the story. I just can't think of one right now because I'm not a subscriber to those magazines. Nothing against them. But here's my, I guess, my 5 cents worth of opinion about this. And I kind of gave up on it as of yesterday because the E! News channel on their YouTube page, they have a little news segment. It's about maybe 4 minutes long. And they discussed that, well, this happened. And towards the end, you see them show a clip of next season's Total Divas. And sure enough, there's a scene where Nikki's telling or asking John, so what, you want to call this off? And that had to have been filmed months ago, maybe early in the year, maybe late last year. But these things, they get recorded months in advance, obviously, and they're trying to keep up with current storylines on Raw and SmackDown. But for some reason, they're following this in, I guess, in our world, out of TV and out of scripts. So what I'm trying to say is, not only do I think reality TV is no longer real because everything's so damn scripted, but it's just a way to have a higher viewership for next season of Total Divas and find out more information as to why they broke up to begin with. And I found it really peculiar where it was Nikki Bella put out a statement to, please respect our privacies at this time, or something along those lines, to it, that she didn't want to discuss it or address it any more that she has already. You guys broke up. It's not like one went to jail or the other one's suspected of murder or anything like that. You broke up. And I get it. People need downtime. They need to emotionally and psychologically recover from this. 6 years is a long time. And if it turns out that it's just a bait and switch just to get more viewership into the Total Diva show, which I don't watch anymore. I'll admit I did watch last season, but that's only because Nia Jax was on it. And yeah, man, it's just the way, well, let me rephrase. There are just certain ways you don't mess around with people's emotions, especially if they're your fans. And what do you get out of this? I don't know. More fame? You have enough of that. You have enough money. You have enough royalties. You have anything and everything that anyone, including myself, would only wish to have. A giant mansion of a house, or two. A driveway full of sports cars that, let's face it, you probably only drive once a year. But I'm split down the middle. It sucks. They broke up. But at the same time, I just hope it's not something that they want to try to lure the fans back to watch more of Total Divas when they're just trying to have everything linked up as if what you see on Raw and SmackDown this year or the beginning of this year, tune into Total Divas to find out the behind the scenes stuff, as if we won't find out in between with media sites or even social media websites that either get reported or they get leaked. Either way, we're going to find out. But to turn this into a soap opera more than it already is, I'm just not for it. But it is what it is. Moving on. So we finally got to bear witness to the superstar shakeup. Obviously, that name, that title came from one of Vince's speech, where he came out a couple of years ago. It's like, it's time to shake things up again. That's it. Superstar shakeup. No, it's a draft, even though they haven't done any trading, but it's a draft. That's what you did, and that's what you're doing, and that's what happened. So a number of surprises, not including the ones that debuted the night after WrestleMania, because apparently they kind of jumped the gun a little bit, I believe. But I guess that was their way to overflow the show with so much talent being either switched around or called off from NXT. And they always said, everyone and anyone is eligible to be switched around. Well, who's to say you debut Bobby Lashley on Raw one week and then the next week he's on SmackDown? I mean, that could have happened, or I should say they could have done that, but I guess they were unaffected by it because they had ironclad Raw contracts. But anywho, so during Raw, they wasted no time in trying to, I guess surprise us in a way. Kurt Angle came out to the ring to introduce the new member of Raw, and that being the new United States champion, Jinder Mahal. And, okay, wasting no time. So already Raw is overstocked with champions. So what's going to happen here? So Jinder basically says he's ready for anyone on the Raw roster, and Kurt Angle says, you know what, that's a good idea. So if anyone back there wants a challenge for the United States Championship, come on out. And sure enough, we get Jeff Hardy. This might have been the first time these guys faced each other in the ring in any capacity. It was a fun-filled match. Jinder Mahal with his powerhouse tactics, and of course Hardy with his aerial maneuvers. And at the end, having yet another surprise to the fans, especially the ones that wouldn't even think of it, but Jeff Hardy defeated Mahal for the United States Championship, and Hardy's still on Raw at this point. So what happens with Randy Orton and his rematch at Backlash? I think they're still working those little bugs out. And then we had the entire Riot Squad debut. Ruby Riott, Liv Morgan, and Sarah Logan getting involved in the Sasha Banks and Bayley match at the end. And it's like, okay, so we have now an overstocked women's division on Raw. But I guess I was getting ahead of myself as I was then, as I am now. And then later on, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens appeared on the Miz show, as Miz was going to introduce the new signees of Raw. And I guess we shouldn't be too surprised, because this whole "you're fired" thing had to end at some point, and it finally did here, when Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn came out and they were explaining how this all came to be. And Kurt Angle was trying to say, like, no, you guys are fired, you don't belong here, and this and that. And of course, Sami Zayn pulling out his grandpa glasses, and I shouldn't talk because I kind of wear them too, and pulls out a folded up piece of paper from the back. Now, he said it was an email that was printed out. Does anyone own like a stack of paper already with the WWE logo imprinted on it? Because even though he never showed it to the audience or to the camera, but from the back, the paper was that transparent, you could see the logo on it. And it looked like one of those contracts that you sign before, obviously a pay-per-view match. And unless this is how they exchange emails with each other, they remind the other where they work and, where it's going, the email. But I just found that too funny. It was too detailed, if you ask me. Emails are usually printed out as if it's a typed out letter. But anyway. So Sami Zayn reads out that Stephanie McMahon was the one that signed Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn to Raw as the new talents, and that there's nothing that Kurt Angle could do about it. So that's that. And at that point, he would set up a 10-man tag team match Kurt Angle did later on for the main event. During commercials, Zack Ryder, poor guy, Zack Ryder was drafted to the Raw, and we only knew that because there was an exclusive interview on Facebook, on WWE's page, and on Twitter as well, indicating that Zack Ryder was coming to Raw. And then we had a backstage segment with The Bar, and sure enough, off to the side debuts Tyler Breeze and Fandango being drafted to Raw. A segment between Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey has Natalya walking in as she was drafted to Raw. Drafted to Raw, that's what I said. Sorry, and then there was a segment where another new addition was going to come out and cut a promo, and ended up being Dolph Ziggler, saying, well, I'm back on Raw, and I'm the greatest, and I'm proving people wrong. Titus Worldwide will come out and try to recruit Dolph Ziggler, but he declined, and then added that he wasn't the only one that came to Raw. And from behind came the former NXT champion of Drew McIntyre, and takes out all the members of, well, all members being two of Titus O'Neil and Apollo Crews. And so Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre, an alliance of sorts, maybe. Failing to see the connection there, but this is why we keep tuning in to find out what and where is this going. Later on, we will see Baron Corbin again off camera. He was given a bit of a video montage, and was mentioned at the end of that to debut on Raw real soon, probably this coming Monday. During commercials, again, it was Mojo Rawley who was drafted to the Raw. I don't mean to laugh much, but for a 3-hour show, you would think they would squeeze some of these guys in, debuting or returning to Raw, and have some airtime rather than you just go to Facebook.com or do what they used to do with the network. So every time they went to commercials, you have to watch on the network to see all the stuff that wouldn't air. I thought that was a good idea. Why they took that away, I have no idea. And then during the main event, it was announced the fifth member of the opposing team of Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and the Miztourage would be Bobby Roode. So Bobby Roode has joined Raw. And at the end of this match, it was announced that Miz was going to SmackDown at the request of Daniel Bryan, who apparently still has some pull, even no longer being the general manager. And once Raw went off the air, it was announced that the Ascension and Chad Gable will join Raw. Again, why these folks never got any TV time is beyond me. So going to SmackDown, interestingly, I should say, and ironically, as the Raw draft ended with Chad Gable breaking up his tag team with Shelton Benjamin. So who opens up the show? Shelton Benjamin. And he comes out saying, like, well, it's time to move on with the singles career. Didn't really want to be in a tag team anymore when he came back. And talked more, trash talked a little more, and had an open challenge. And out came Randy Orton. It's like, okay, it's been a while since we've seen this match. And by a while, I mean probably a decade. And Randy's barely at the bottom of the ramp, and all of a sudden you hear Jeff Hardy's music hit, and he just, I guess dancing is the way to describe it, dances his way right by Randy Orton. Randy's left there like a deer in headlights. Like, okay, that just happened. And it was a match between Shelton Benjamin and Jeff Hardy. Again, another match that hasn't happened in almost a decade. Only this time, Jeff Hardy returned to SmackDown with the United States Championship, where I guess it never really left, and had a great match with Shelton, and their old rivalry was over the Intercontinental title. And it was a great match. I got to say, it was a really great match. Both men, 10 years later, still got it. Among Jeff Hardy, I guess you could say a reunion of sorts with the Absolution, as Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose jumped ship to SmackDown. So they kind of switched the two women fashions. Okay. Probably the biggest surprise of all, Samoa Joe jumped ship and is now part of SmackDown. In the backstage segment with Daniel Bryan, You see walking into frame, Big Cass finally returning after his torn quad. Asuka officially joins, and I say that because she was back and forth between Raw and SmackDown, between the Rumble and WrestleMania. And, well, you might as well keep Asuka on SmackDown. She was the recent challenger and opponent for the SmackDown Women's title, and why not? They broke up the Bullet Club. Oh, excuse me. I'm not Corey Grace here. The Balor Club was broken up as Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, the Good Brothers, have now joined SmackDown. Sanity minus Nikki Cross has joined. Speaking of Nikki Cross, Dave Meltzer believes that NXT has more plans for Nikki Cross, possibly a long storyline with Shayna Baszler and the NXT Women's title. So good for her. I mean, she loses her friends and her group, so to speak, but there are bigger plans for Nikki in the future, and I hope it works out. I really do. R-Truth, I haven't seen much of him lately. I know he had a couple of spots here and there on Raw, but he had a really good, hilarious one with The New Day as he debuted on SmackDown this week, during commercials, along with The Bar. But no, let me rephrase that. The Bar was introduced during commercials, but they ended up having a live video feed somewhere. They did one of those Facebook Live thingamajigs, and they broadcast it on air that The Bar was going to head over to SmackDown. We won't know until... It wouldn't make sense for them to debut this coming week, because next Friday is their Greatest Royal Rumble, and that's when they have their match with the Woken Warriors, unofficial, Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt, for the vacant Raw Tag Team titles. So I hope this wasn't a giveaway or a spoiler, if you will, because The Bar is now on SmackDown, or going to be, and that they're still challenging for the Raw Tag Team titles. If that makes any sense to anyone, let me know. And then finally, and I think it's about time, especially for former NXT champion Andrade Cien Almas and Zelina Vega are now part of SmackDown. They should really spice things up, I should say, especially with Zelina, part of the women's division. I understand she hasn't wrestled yet, but it's quite possible that she might mix it up with the rest of the women's division here on SmackDown. Maybe a legit contender for the title, because she's she's a firecracker. And I know there are a bunch of others on Raw and SmackDown in the women's division that are considered firecrackers, but Zelina, to me, she just brings this extra spark to that firecracker. And, you know, if she doesn't really play that cowardly heel type of character and really gets in your face and really doesn't take any, shite from anyone, then, yeah, she'll whip you. And then possibly be considered a serious threat to the women's title. But we'll see. We shall see. So that's your results of the shakeup. I didn't recall any off-air or online drafting going on after the fact, but that's about an even split, if you think about it, about 20-19, if my math is right, and I haven't taken math in years, but it's about an even split for both Raw and SmackDown, and at least they didn't do what they did last year and just literally swipe rosters. I mean, there might have been a few exceptions, but they literally swiped the rosters last year. And it's not much of a draft or a shakeup if you think about it. But I think adding in the NXT faces and introducing familiar faces and a couple of old ones that we haven't seen in a while, I guess fills in the void in a sense. But we'll see how things go as they start up this new venture, this new season into next year's WrestleMania. That will be emanating from MetLife Stadium, that is. Chris Jericho had a nice chat with StillRealToMe.com. StillRealToUs.com. And personally, it is. But he clarified one particular and very important story that many of us were wondering, and that is Jericho is his working relationship with New Japan has finished. But he did mention that things didn't work out, but would love to go back. He wasn't too specifying in that. I believe he was supposed to make at least one more appearance for New Japan. And I guess as he mentioned here, things didn't work out. So Jericho is not expected to return to New Japan anytime soon, but there hasn't been any response from New Japan yet, so I would assume the door is still open to do business later. And I hope, because that match with Kenny Omega, ever since Jump, it drew so much attention worldwide, and they pulled great numbers that day at Wrestle Kingdom. I cannot imagine why they wouldn't do any kind of business together again. But Jericho is expected to appear at the Greatest Royal Rumble, which I'll run down here in a bit. And Jericho's getting out there. He's staying busy. Besides his podcast, besides Fozzy, making TV and movie appearances here and there, the man is busy. And I mentioned WrestleMania just a little while ago, and it turns out Orlando wants WrestleMania to return to the old Citrus Bowl, which is now the Camping World Stadium. Their Twitter page, the Camping World Stadium that is asking the fans to help make this happen. In other words, they want you to tweet, comments, pictures, anything that will help the WWE get that attention to bring back WrestleMania to Orlando as soon as possible. They just had one there last year for 33. And I mentioned this in my last episode. If they can find a way to shrink that walking ramp, that, what was it, 80, 90 something yards, whatever it was. If they can shrink that and maybe not so go too crazy, like $5 million worth of craziness for that stage alone. Yeah, I think it's possible. And I'm not saying that's what's holding them back. I'm just saying to fill in that stadium to as much capacity as possible. I mean, it was renovated a couple of years ago. And I think in the case of the audience, the more the merrier. And, I get at least, I believe, no, it was the same side as they did to WrestleMania 24, meaning that that side of the stadium that they used for the entrance, that's like an open section, and right behind it is this huge lake, and it's a pretty impressive view. Matter of fact, when all that staging is not there. But point being that they use that side of the stadium to set up their staging, obviously. But if there's a way to minimize it just enough and not block off too much section of the left and right hand sides of the stage, then yeah, and not to mention it'll cut a break to the wrestlers trying to walk down. I mean, that's just me. I'm not. It doesn't always have to be bigger is better. Not always. If there's a way to minimize it, and where sometimes they say, well, less is more, then I say why not? But they're not asking me, and maybe I'll send them a suggestion one day if I can find their suggestion box. Speaking of the Greatest Royal Rumble, I got a couple of stories that's gonna basically blend into each other. So why don't I just get into the rundown? That's going to be next Friday, 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on the network. So in no particular order, let's just run down the matches. First up, we have The Undertaker and Rusev. That's still a casket match, but more importantly, it's back on. Now, apparently there was a plead from Lana on her social media that she wanted her husband back in the not only on the card, but in the match itself with The Undertaker. For those who don't remember, I guess they took to heart what Rusev said on that TMZ interview, where he was calling The Undertaker an old man and he can't hang anymore and stuff like that. My impression was that Rusev and Lana, but more Rusev than anyone else, was in character. Lana was in and out of character because, that Russian accent. And when she spoke perfect English, it wasn't, the ravishing Russian. It was just Lana. And Rusev, again, I believe was in character. If that wasn't the case, then that meant that Michelle McCool, the wife of The Undertaker, didn't take too kindly to those words and went to social media and just trash-talked Rusev and Lana. And somehow this got back to the office and made the switch from Rusev to Jericho in this casket match. And then this week, Lana just got to social media and basically, if there's a way to get Rusev back on the card besides the 50-man Royal Rumble, but, back in the casket match with The Undertaker, he deserves it. He needs this. And I gotta say, anyone that goes up against the Undertaker that could still go, even if it just turns out to be a 5-minute casket match, just the fact that you were in there with the Undertaker, I think is accomplishment enough. To even say that, I was in the ring with the Undertaker this one time, and me and him went at it. It was only 5 minutes, but you almost get bragging rights, and in a good way. And to whatever was exactly said behind the scenes to get Rusev back on the card itself to face the Undertaker, then I say kudos, because it worked. And it kind of happened overnight in between the shakeup this week, and I say great. Give Rusev somewhat of a pat on the back, or this accolade, because his Rusev Day is taken off. He's still a heel officially, but the fans are behind him. And this Rusev Day is really, really helping with aiding English. I really don't see, at least for now, I don't see how Lana can mix in with that. But, she's doing her own thing, I guess, with Total Diva still. But I'm really glad to see that they pull their heads out there, and put the match back on. Brock Lesnar will defend his Universal Championship against Roman Reigns in a steel cage match. And everyone's now saying, okay, this is the match Lesnar has to drop the title. And that's the only reason why he agreed to do it, because he was going to do it outside the States. He was going to do it after he was signed with the company so he could focus on a UFC return. I'm the kind of person that believes it when I see it. And what are those, even if one slight little rumor is true, it doesn't really matter. Honestly, I don't think it does, because everybody's going to get what they want. Lesnar drops the belt after over a year now. And at the same time, you're kind of rooting on the person that someone else you don't want to have the title either. So, it's a kind of a lose-lose situation for the fans, but it's a win-win for WWE and Vince. But I expect it to be a hard-hitting match. It's not often we see Lesnar in the cage. Honestly, has he ever? He's been in Hell in a Cell. But a steel cage, I can't remember. Was he on a SmackDown cage match with? Yeah, was it with Vince? Okay, and might have been with Angle as well. I think leading up to WrestleMania 19, that time period. So okay, we've had seen Lesnar before in the cage. He's rarely on TV. You kind of lose thought and memory about what he used to do and what is left for him to accomplish in the WWE. And put him in maybe a elimination chamber match or something, or a ladder match, which I kind of think he did too. But oh well. Lesnar, Reigns, Universal title, steel cage match. In a rematch from WrestleMania as well, AJ Styles defends his WWE Championship against Shinsuke Nakamura, who was just going around low-blowing Styles every week on SmackDown, and he doesn't speak English anymore, apparently. I'm hoping for a big payoff here. No pun intended. Oh, man. I really want to see these guys, especially since they're going to a part of the world they never go to or rarely have, let alone have it televised. I'm not saying copy and paste their Wrestle Kingdom match, but the bar even then was raised so high that the couple of years to come from that point, at least in New Japan, it was almost as if everyone had not an attitude, but almost like a feeling, follow that. I did this, I raised the bar, the fans out there are still going crazy. The show's over and they're still cheering. And we didn't get that at this year's WrestleMania. I think it was overhyped, this dream match and this and that. It must be deja vu or dream because we've seen it before. At least not in WWE. Okay, I can accept that. But I just hope that if they haven't already, Shinsuke and Styles can have a conversation. And I think I mentioned this last week as well. Hey, we're going to be in Saudi Arabia. It's for one of the major titles, if not the major title. And we really got to tear the house down. Chances are they're not going to get main event again, but, give us something. And personally, to me, it doesn't matter that it took place in another part of the world. Just the fact that we get an awesome match. Hell, that Wrestle Kingdom match was in the States. So, why should that be any difference, or hell, why should that be a difference maker? Just have a great match, please. John Cena takes on Triple H, which will be very interesting. It's been a few years since we had these two guys face up against each other, let alone in a major card like this. But there's no storyline with this one. They just threw them together, I guess, for the fans in Saudi Arabia watching them for the first time live. Should be really good. In a rematch from this past week's Raw, Jeff Hardy would defend his newly won United States Championship against Jinder Mahal. As I mentioned earlier, Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt will face Cesaro and Sheamus for the vacant Raw Tag Team Championships. For the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, the Bludgeon Brothers defend against the Usos. So I guess most of these guys that are getting the title matches that lost them this week since WrestleMania getting the rematches clause right here and there. And finally, for the Intercontinental Championship, a fatal four-way. I believe this would have been the original WrestleMania match, but for some reason it didn't happen. It was off by a day, if you think about it, because The Miz, Seth Rollins, and Finn Balor will face each other in the Intercontinental Championship ladder match with Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe returned the day after Mania, and many people speculated if Samoa Joe can get healthy enough and return on time, which he was clear before Mania. But I guess they just wanted to finish up the storylines with The Miz and Rollins and Balor. So now that Joe is back, he's waiting for the results of the Lesnar Roman Reigns match for Backlash. But in the meantime, give him an Intercontinental ladder match against Miz, Rollins, and Balor. And of course, more than likely, this will be the main event. It should be the 50-man Greatest Royal Rumble match. Now, there have been a few names announced already, at least from WWE's side. You got Baron Corbin, the returning Big Show, Braun Strowman, Kurt Angle will be in the match. Daniel Bryan, who's making his return, or has, but meaning in the Royal Rumble match. All members of the New Day, Dolph Ziggler, Elias, Chris Jericho now swiping with Rusev. And there was word that there'll also be local talent participating as well. And it's good timing too, because this week WWE has held a 2-day tryout ahead of the Greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia. They've uploaded pics and videos for potential superstars and this intense workouts, intense routines. Just looking at it, I just lost my breath as I am here. But I've seen some of the footage, and a lot of this new talent, a lot of the young talent, they look great. They look amazing. I cannot imagine signing at least from what I saw, there were probably close to 30 people, men and women. And I didn't catch none of their names, but there was a couple of people that look in great shape. They looked like they could hang. A couple of the coaches were even impressed and give them high fives, pat on the back. So they really want this. If I was still in the game, so to speak, physically, then yeah, not that I'll travel all the way to Saudi Arabia, but just to say that I had a try with WWE is another accomplishment, I think, for itself when you're trying to get into the business. So kudos for these men and women who tried, and hopefully they'll be chosen. Again, maybe not all of them, but a good handful of them, at least from what I saw. And if you want to see for yourself, just head over to their social media pages, especially Twitter and their YouTube channel. All of that is uploaded. A couple of interesting news here as I begin to wind down a little bit. The Orlando Police Department has reported has reported from the WWE, or about the WWE, I should say, that they granted that the WWE has gained a restraining order against Armando Alejandro Montalvo. How is that an awesome manager's name right there? Like, you had you had Umaga's old manager, Estrada. No, just okay. I'm not gonna give this guy too much credit, but it's been believed that Montalvo here has been harassing the company since 2015. and that also he's been causing incidents in Florida, smearing his own feces on the wall of the Performance Center in Orlando. This happened back in July of 2015. He wore and banged on the door wearing a makeshift costume. I think they withheld details about the costume other more than it was a makeshift. Harassing employees at events, at live events in the Orlando area. And he was screaming his wrestling name, whatever it was. And he would point and make references to, his genitals. The WWE claims that Montalvo has threatened to use, oh Lord, who and what is this guy? He's threatened to use, how can I put this? I mean, I know the medical term is the safest PC way, but sometimes I try to use terminology without having my listeners use their imagination, but I apologize. The WWE claims that Montalvo has threatened to use his semen in a biological attack. In other words, what gorillas do with their poop? Yeah. And in early April, Montalvo left a cryptic message on the Instagram, and which prompted the company to get this restraining order. Now, this came out this past Wednesday. If there was one, I'm not going to follow up on a response from this disgusting human being, in my opinion. And even to have half of these alleged remarks, statements, actions that he's done against the Performance Center, this is a little more than a cry for help or someone trying to seek attention. I just hope, if need be, I hope this individual gets the help that he needs, and one day can attend another live event as a fan. Just sit there, have your popcorn, drink your beverage, and have a good time, and go home 2-3 hours later. But unfortunately, for this restraining order, he can't even attend one of those at all. He can't even be. There was no details of the restraining order as far as how far, how close, and none of that stuff. But he just can't come anywhere near anything related to WWE. So, yeah, he gets kicked out before he even gets a chance to attend any event. So, I hope for the sake of Orlando, trying to get WrestleMania back, that this guy doesn't, get too slick and try to show up there either. So, it's just unfortunate, and I'll leave it at that. Hell apparently has frozen over as the WWE and Impact Wrestling, the former TNA company, have been working together to put an updated autobiography of the Hardy Boys, which is called the Twist of Fate, the best of the Hardy Boys, meaning not only would it include matches and footage from the Hardy Boys' early days, from the Omega Federation, the early WWF, also Attitude Era sections, and up to, I believe, around WrestleMania 25, and the fallouts with the company, in particularly with Jeff Hardy, and also their journey in and out of Impact Wrestling. And they will have footage of their debut, and also the origins of the woken/broken universe of Matt Hardy and Brother Nero. And it will all, from based on the trailer that they put out, it all comes together at last year's WrestleMania, and some footage from recent events. And I gotta say, now this is what I believe made Impact give into their, suggestions and ideas. I didn't read too much into it because I was just so overthrown by this story. But Impact still might be in financial peril, and there might have been, a price tag for the footage on TNA's part to have WWE pay off and say, hey, you want this footage? It's going to cost you this much. And we would like to have our name acknowledged and put up our information, which, according to a report from who put it up? Was it Dave Meltzer? Oh man, I didn't write it down here, but it was suggested that Impact gets some kind of recognition, basically. So at the end of the video, where you see the credits, not only saying additional footage courtesy of Impact Wrestling, but no, they will have their websites, they will have their logo, and I guess any other information that they agreed upon. So that's a good tactical business maneuver there by Impact, and I got to say, well, if it's to believe what I think happened as far as putting a price tag for the footage, then good for them. Good for them, and how they're still surviving now, whether it's solely based on network money, then it's the little edge in the hood, and I wouldn't say mocked them. I wouldn't even say I trashed them, but I definitely wasn't too fond of a lot of Impact tactics as far as not treating the talent well. And this is beyond talking about salaries and getting paid on time and this and that. But there was just a lot of behind the scenes stuff that came to fruition, and a lot of talent came forward as far as management goes, and the people that have run the place, they shouldn't be there and stuff like that. And it just makes the place sound really miserable to work at. And if it was me, I'll just go in, do my match or a promo or whatever it is, and I'll just leave because the tension is there, the lack of chemistry is there. And who would want to stick around for that? That's just me. That's probably my old fashioned self thinking out loud, but that is just me. One interesting report here. You may have never heard the name of Catherine Alexander, but apparently Catherine is suing the WWE and 2K Games. This comes off from TMZ Sports. Suing because she is the sole creator of Randy Orton's back tattoo, the one that goes across his shoulders from one end to the other. And it's been appearing, not only in video games, but other platforms. Hell, I have an old RKO T-shirt in the form of the old NWO letters, and on the back it has that particular tattoo that she's referencing to. Hopefully she got royalties out of it, because I never heard anything from that time period about her suing the WWE for using it. But here we are. She's suing 2K Games and WWE, and that she's been tattooing Orton's back since '03, and alleges that she owns the copyrights to it and the design itself. She also alleges that her design isn't the 2K Games with that 2K has taken over since when? 2013 was it? Well, it was very recent, since THQ went down. And she raised the issue again back in '09 and was only offered $450. Apparently that wasn't enough, so she's pursuing this lawsuit. I would assume on royalty basis, because this is why, if you think about it, when CM Punk was appearing on these games, they would intentionally leave out his Pepsi tattoo and his Cobra tattoo. Not that anyone was the original designed and tattooed on the shoulders, but they're well-known logos, and if you're trying to get attention for your company with a familiar logo, that's what you would do. And if you're a fan, I guess a big enough fan to have it tattooed on your body for the rest of your life, and not pay the royalties to that said company, then yeah, you would not show it. So G.I. Joe and Pepsi lost out on any possible royalties from WWE Games at the time. And this is a similar situation. There was also, if you remember, during the Hangover trilogy movies, the artist that did Mike Tyson's face tattoo, he also tried to sue. I honestly do not know the result of it, but he tried to sue, what was the company? Warner Brothers, about not getting any royalties for his tattoo being shown in movies and being basically advertised in trailers and posters and this and that. And at least some kind of compensation is in order. But if you're just going to flat out ignore the fact that, you have all your I's dotted and T's crossed, and make sure you cover all your bases. And if it's just a simple star tattoo. I mean, who can claim that they were the original designer of a star? And I know there are many different types of star designs, but my take here is, give Catherine what she's owed, especially in video game royalties. They're making appearances. This is no different than the handful of wrestlers that are still suing for some kind of royalties from appearing on the WWE network. It's their face, it's their likeness. They're the ones portraying the characters of whichever name. For example, you got Raven and Johnny Polo, who played them. You know, Scott Levy, if I'm pronouncing his name right, Scott Levine. So, do what's right here at WWE and pay this lady what she's owed. And I'll end on this unfortunate, sad news. And many of you know, Paul Jones, who was not as well known as many other names that I mentioned here in the show, but Paul Jones has passed away at the age of 76, according to WWE.com, a fixture of Mid-Atlantic wrestling from the 60s and the 70s, a manager of many well-known names from that point of view's future, such as Ricky Steamboat, Wahoo McDaniels, and Baron von Raschke, very well known in the NWA Mid-Atlantic territories. Also managing the Powers of Pain, Jake the Snake Roberts, Abdullah the Butcher, just to name a few. And they have a nice little article up in their homepage that WWE does, give you a little more intel of who this man used to be in the business and who he was as a human being. And it's very fortunate that he's no longer with us. Also this week, we heard the sad news of the passing of Bruno Sammartino at the age of 82. Probably, and I know it wasn't the only one, probably one of the healthiest men alive. People talk about Bruce Lee being the healthiest man, but he died at an early age as well. And this spread like wildfire. And I mean, talk about a man living the dream. I was fortunate enough to meet the man one time. And he didn't have to, but he took a few moments of his time there because we were in this crowded area. It was a meet and greet session. Not only him, but there were a bunch of other legends and current superstars at the time all over the place. And telling me how important nutrition is and to stay healthy. When he signed this 8x10 picture autograph of himself, he even wrote a little message. I wasn't the only one. I'm just, pointing out my experience about to stay healthy, continue training and always be kind to others. Try not to paraphrase too much and to basically to take care of myself. But beyond that, this man was a true living legend, even way before he was given that moniker and before he passed it on to Larry Zbyszko. Former WWF champion, I believe he was about for 3 years. 3 years as world champion. And again, probably one of the best shooters out there, mixed in with some technical skills. He tried to bring in his son into the business. I believe had a debut match at WrestleMania 1 with Brutus Beefcake. It's just really sad, but at least I was having a conversation right before I came on air here with one of my colleagues here at CSB, how much he meant to the sport. Not only that, how much he meant to pop culture. And that Sammartino, with his heritage and background, and he was one of the very few that made it so successfully that he didn't have to return to continue on his legacy. He did what he did during his time, and he was still talked about decades later, long after his retirement. And he'll probably be discussed even more now, days, weeks, months, years after his passing. Close friend with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that was a great visual back in 2013, where Arnold was selected to induct Bruno Sammartino into the WWE Hall of Fame. It was it was a great visual. Arnold even said many times Bruno was his hero. Didn't always have to have the physique of an Olympian, but you knew a man by his stature how strong he was, not only physically but also mentally and the spirit. And I think if my research is correct, I think Sammartino still holds the record of having 188 sellouts at Madison Square Garden, headlining and selling out the Garden during his time as champion, during the time chasing the title, or just being at some point in the card. I don't know if that record was ever broken or if it still stands, but definitely a pioneer in the business. And though it was a short period, and I was able to take a picture, but I was very fortunate and very privileged to have known the man, even though it was so brief, and that now he and Mr. Jones can rest in peace and be in a better place. I really didn't want to end on a sad note, but I couldn't really go on without acknowledging these two passings, and Paul Jones and Bruno Sammartino. You hate to hear about it, you hate to discuss it, but it is life, and we just got to find ways to cope with it and move on. So here's to Bruno and here's to Paul, and that one day when all the fans are able to meet up with them again, they can share even more stories of what they're experiencing now. Thank you for joining me. This has been the JM Report. I would appreciate it if anyone leaves a comment below, a like to the video or audio, and subscribe. Everything is detailed in the description below. And I will be back next time. But funny thing about my next episode, I'll probably be in session during the Greatest Royal Rumble. So it's just how things are scheduled right now. But I'll try my best to either have on-air results, or I'm just going to have to bring it up the following episode. But I'll see what I can do. Who knows how long this event's going to be. It wouldn't surprise me if it's another 4 or 5 hours, like another WrestleMania. But once again, thanks to everyone that joined me here today. Thank you for listening.